How are you doing, mate?
All good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well, and very warmly on the Solent, on the south coast. How's it done in Plymouth?
Oh, it's been amazing today. Most of the days been sunny, but every time I've gone and lain outside in the sun, the cloud has come over.
It's always the way, isn't it?
It is what it is.
Yeah. So thank you for joining me tonight, Steve. Oh, I just knocked my trouble. Thanks for joining me tonight, Steve. I'm looking forward to chatting and hearing about your journey. But why don't we start off, first of all, why don't you introduce yourself, tell everyone who you are, what it is that you do, and kind of, how you got there.
Yeah, amazing. So my name's Steve Gibson. I am part of a church replant in Plymouth called St. Matthias, an HTB church. But actually about this time last year, September last year, I stepped down from the worship team there and stopped serving because I felt God say something to me about serving outside more and focusing on fresh starts. And so with a team that I was already part of called King's Anthem, began looking at ways of investing in the local community, investing in small churches, finding ways to encourage teams, to coach teams and work with them. And it's been an absolutely incredible year. All Fantastic. Our plans, obviously, went to pot when lockdown happened. But even then, we've still been able to record things for different events and send stuff out and be part of those conversations with churches to help them out. So, yeah, been great fun.
Fantastic. And so are you connecting, because I know Devon, but I used to live there. I spent my teenage years there. And so I know how rural Devon can be. How is that working for you? Are you connecting with a lot of rural churches or just city churches or what?
Oh, without a doubt, the rural side of things.
Yeah.
What we found, especially in Ashburton, about 45 minutes up the A38 from where I live, there's a place called Ashburton. There's a group of about 7 different churches there, all of whom are spread out, all of whom are trying to work out how to do online church and maintain a sense of community, despite the fact that when they open their door in the morning, there's a 5-minute walk to their neighbour.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Fantastic. So tell us a bit more about King's Anthem. What's King's Anthem?
So King's Anthem, it started off actually as a different band. A person called Mark Taylor was running it for years under the name One Touch. And it started off as something that he was set up to get modern worship into churches. And he would go around, and the energy that he had, unfortunately he passed away last year with motor neuron disease. Before that, literally he was hopping from side to side on his feet when he led worship. He was out there and he was going for it. When he passed away, I took on the mantle, and we decided that we couldn't be One Touch because it was associated with him so much, and we became King's Anthem because we felt that we were being called as a team to sing out the King's Anthem in this land. And certainly as a team, we go out to different places, like I mentioned, and what we want to do is set people on fire for God.
Yeah.
We want to see them encouraged, and ideally, we want to see ourselves out of a job.
Sure.
So we want to be going to a place, training up the local people. They can then lead the worship themselves. We go away, find somewhere else to invest in. That's
fantastic, fantastic. And what kind of churches are you connecting with through that?
Oh my God.
Not so much like rural and city, but in terms of tradition and style and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. So we were part of the Exeter Cathedral Pentecost service.
Okay.
Obviously at Pentecost.
Yeah.
And that service was supposed to be an online, or wasn't supposed to be an online thing, became an online thing.
Yeah.
That congregation were very traditional, and we were asked to produce a hymn at the start, which is not our style. If you heard my vocals on that one, they weren't great, and I double recorded my vocals on the track to try and hide the fact that it was wobbling so much in a dodgy way.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've had some really traditional faces that we've been supporting, but also like the Ashburton crew, lots of different churches with lots of different denominations, none of them really knowing modern worship to the nth degree.
Okay,
Most of them beginners in that world, but hungry for modern worship.
Yeah.
So giving them songs without having to go through the Graham Kendrick years.
Sure.
Skipping that 20 years of songs.
Skip it.
Yeah. They have no idea who Dave Bilber is. And love those people, but they've skipped that generation of worship leaders and gone straight to people like Pat Barrett. They've gone straight to the Worship Central stuff.
Fantastic.
Which is much, much easier for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, a really wide variety of different people there.
It's funny you say that. It is one of the things that when I've been with our team and we're talking about like songs and writers and stuff, and I mentioned Graham Kendrick and Chris Bowater, and they're like, huh? Who?
I know.
Like, no, come on. We need to do modern worship history here for you. You need to understand how we got to where we are now.
Yeah, and yet, if you say "Shine, Jesus, shine,"
everyone
knows that one.
Yes.
That one's the classic. That was the one everyone goes to. They've learned it at school. They know that one.
Yes. Yeah. Fantastic. That's good. And so, how long have you been involved in a worship team in whatever way?
So back in 1995, my gran took me to Spring Harvest for the first time.
Yeah.
And I'd been at church all my life at that point. And when I went to Spring Harvest, my eyes just went, wow, it's bigger than just my church.
Yeah.
Realised there was more to it. The three of us in the youth group at the time came out. We went, well, we're starting a band, aren't we? Yep, we're not the organ anymore. And we set up a band. I still remember really well. We went to one church. We got there and said, hi, can we do a sound check? All excited about doing our first ever sound check. And the person in charge said, I'm sorry, you can't do that because the steward hasn't arrived. We said, no, we know how to do it. Don't worry. Still plug up. No, you don't understand, they said. Our sound system is powered by the car battery. So, yes,
wow.
it's been a journey, but since 1995, we've been active doing something somewhere.
Fantastic, fantastic. So this chat briefly about St. Matthias and the team there. Do they have a vision, a statement as a worship team, or a kind of a culture or anything like that? And if so, what is it?
Well, they're currently in a state of transition. So St. Matthias have the same statement that to play our part in the evangelization of Plymouth and the Southwest, the revitalization of the church and the transformation of society. And that's the same thread that runs through most HTB churches.
Yes. Okay, so, because I spoke to Matt Bray, who's the worship leader of a HTB plant here in Portsmouth, Harbour Church, and their vision is pretty much that. Yeah.
Exactly, and so the St. Matt's vision statement is very much that.
Yeah.
We've been really blessed to have John Hudson with us since the start. Recently, he moved on to Creation Fest and is now their global lead there and leading some worship down there in the outside air with cars coming in all over the place. It's been amazing.
Yes, yeah.
We've now got Phil Jones has just started with us.
Okay.
I'm yet to meet him thanks to lockdown, but I'm looking forward and I've heard great things already.
Excellent.
I can't wait to see what he does at the church. So yeah.
Fantastic. I'm just going to say a quick hello to Marcia, to Angela, who's joining us from Southern California. Fantastic. That's brilliant. So let's get back to kind of your journey. What have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced as whether you've been leading a team or in your role as advising these other worship teams? What have been some of the biggest challenges that you faced and how have you overcome them?
I think the biggest challenge, without a doubt, going from place to place is resources.
Yeah.
There are so many churches who have this dream that if they have a Nord, if they have the right sound system, if they have the right microphones, if they bought the right equipment, then the worship in their church will sound amazing and all will be well.
Yeah.
If they just had this. And the biggest challenge for us is that we as a team, as King's Anthem, none of us are that rich.
Sure.
I quit my job a few years ago to do more stuff based in ministry. It's been really exciting, but again, no money.
Yeah.
So moving forward, I know we've really had to pray into what God wants us to do and how He's resourced us. But I also know that God is the provider. And if God is our provider and provides for our needs, and we know that, then we already have what we need to be able to do what we're being called to do.
Sure.
And if in a church there's not a single person who plays an instrument, God probably isn't calling anyone in that church to be a worship leader with an instrument.
Sure.
They're probably calling the church to something else. Because if they were being called that way, potentially, possibly, then God would provide that person to join them.
Sure.
And so one of our biggest challenges has been trying to overcome the dream image of what could, and I know me personally as well, that dream image of what I would look like on stage, what I would wear, what I would sound like, the sort of songs I can sing and just worship with them, and scrap all of that and think like, what can I do to actually meet the needs of this congregation? What songs do they actually know? Can I meet them where they are? What do they actually need to hear? And what resources do they have? If I can't have a full band, then don't have a full band. Obviously, they don't need it. God will obviously meet our wants, and if we pray to Him, He will say, we want this. And sometimes they'll go, you know what, I'll give you that. But more importantly, He's the provider of our needs. So if we need it,
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, excuse me. So how are you doing that? How are you working that out in this current lockdown situation where you aren't actually able to meet with churches, but you're communicating with them like through Zoom or like this? How can you help meet their needs in that way?
Oh, it's been absolutely hilarious. So when I talk to a church where the fact that they're talking to me online is a miracle in itself.
Yeah.
Not only because of the technology limitations, but also because they have no broadband, because they're in the middle of nowhere. And their signal is only working if they stand on a hill at a certain angle and they tilt their phone whilst touching the top with a flower or something. It's that sort of, when you're dealing with churches in that situation, you know that they're going to do their best
Yeah.
to talk to you. For those churches, we found it easier to record videos beforehand. And certainly for worship I've been providing for them, I've set up a mini studio in my house. Again, I live alone. So I've got the advantage of being able to make as much noise as I want and having a spare room, which is always a bonus. And I've set it up in a certain way. But even that, I've only been able to use equipment that I've got in the house with no income, and lockdown also drying up some income. I've had to use what I've got right now. There's a lamp in front of me. It's actually blinding me slightly. It's not one of those beautiful big lamps that everyone seems to have at the moment. It's just an ordinary lamp with a bulb. At the end of this, I'll put some sunglasses on and be fine. But it's making do. And that's the key thing. For churches who have a decent signal, we've been able to do a few live broadcasts using software like OBS or Facebook Live or whatever. And again, it's not about picking the best software for each church. It's about picking the software where those people meet.
Yes.
For an event called Singing Rooms, which is originally it was 12 hours of non-stop worship.
Okay,
really exciting to do. We've had to shrink it to 3 hours. And believe me, last time I had so many videos of different people sending to me saying, "How can we put part of it?" That we had 4 or 5 hours worth of material.
Wow.
And I had to cut it down to make it fit, which was awful. But I knew that online you just don't do 5-hour non-stop worship.
Sure.
So for this 3 hours of worship, we had to piece together the video very carefully, think about how an audience online would perceive it. At what point do you sort of start wandering a little bit and think, well, I think I'm restless now. I've been sat watching a screen for too long. What can you do to engage people that way? And thinking about each of those things for each congregation, it's been a huge challenge, but also a huge pleasure. Yeah.
And so what sort of fruit have you been seeing then from these churches?
Oh, so Singing Rooms, brilliant example, Singing Rooms. We had the first one we did in May. We sort of delayed it a bit. In May we started it and we had about 200 people tuning into that one, and thought, fantastic, 200 people. Normally 30 people turn up to the event, but because it's spread out during the day, there could be all sorts of different people at different times.
Sure.
All of someone singing huge numbers. We thought, I know, we'll release the individual worship sets on YouTube as well. The channel on YouTube has grown as more and more people are subscribing and engaging with the worship.
Fantastic.
I know, for example, our Californian friend who was in our chat a second ago, he sent me a video of her worshipping along to one of those video sets in California.
Okay, wow.
So we know that those songs are getting out there somehow.
Yeah.
We know that people are engaging with it. One of the churches in Ashburton on Sunday morning said, "Oh, just to let you know, you're leading worship this morning." I went, "Am I?" But yeah, we're going to use one of your old videos. We've cut it up a little bit.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
Brilliant. So the impact of what I do, in fact, I used to carry around, I've got it over here, I used to carry around a stone with me in my pocket all the time to remind me that when you do something, it causes ripples. If I drop that in water, it causes ripples. You never know when those ripples are going to be. So if we're putting stuff out there digitally, it's exciting because we never know what the full impact will be, but we're sticking it out there for people to engage with.
That's awesome. Yes, you're so right. Yeah, we just never know the influence that we have, and we could say something that just kind of, like you say, ripples on, and it meets someone else's need way beyond your own sphere of influence. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right. So I wanted to ask, I actually wanted to go back. You're getting a lot of love here, so I think there's a lot of people who are enjoying the Singing Rooms discussion there. That's really good. I think that's Angela who's loving that. I wanted to go back, actually. You said that in 1995 you went to Spring Harvest and that kind of sort of propelled you. How did you actually get into being involved in a worship team?
I've got to go to my gran for this one again.
Yeah.
My gran had come from a church in Bristol. She was my step-gran, and she joined the family, introduced us to Spring Harvest. She had been put basically in a church, which was an organ-based hymn traditional church. And for her, it was a huge culture shift. At the time, I was just starting to learn guitar, and she was the one teaching me. She had a small shed in the back garden, and because it was quiet and their garden was quite long, the three of us used to rehearse in that shed. But after a while, she said, come inside, we'll join you here. And then in the house, she would lead us, give us a bit more guidance, a bit more prompting. She did an amazing job. I think we kept going until about 2002, 2003. as a whole team, worshipping together, doing different things, going from church to church, not just a home church, but going all over the place. And she would constantly give me advice, hints, mentoring, a huge positive influence in my life.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. It's so good when you have someone like that who's just like, they want the very best for you, don't they? And all they're thinking about is how can I help you become better? Not, better isn't the right word, but you know what I mean? How can you grow into the fullness of what your potential is to be? And they're not trying to stifle you or impose their own agenda or ideas, but they just kind of want to push you on. That's so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I've got to be honest, my parents, the houses we lived in, the walls weren't that thin, and I used to worship for half an hour a night at one point, if not more, just going and singing different songs out. I probably should have been doing schoolwork, and my grades probably reflected. But I do know that as I was worshipping, I do remember the neighbour 3 doors down one day saying, "Are you the one that sings all the time?" So my parents lived in that house. They must have at some point gone, okay, this is getting too much now. But they were patient with me. They knew what I was doing. And again, that just rehearsing, going over songs, getting to understand what songs are. And then because I got bored of songs, going beyond the song. Going beyond and deeper into worship. Again, such an amazing thing to do.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. So looking back, is there anything in hindsight that you wish you hadn't done? That's quite within the content of team. Clarify that.
You broke up then halfway through the question.
Oh, did I? Okay, sorry. Okay, so is there anything, looking back, is there anything in hindsight that you wish you hadn't done?
Yes. Okay. This is going to be a bit of a confession now, and if anyone's who was part of what was involved, then I apologise in advance. Nothing personal. So 2, maybe 3 years ago, St Matt's in Plymouth decided they were going to launch a church plant, and they were going to put a church plant in one of the most deprived areas of Plymouth. It was the person leading it, a good friend called Rob, absolute brilliant leader. He looked at that community and thought the HGV model that we could use isn't going to work in the same way here. We need to adapt in some way. We need to do it differently. I was asked, would I be involved in the church plant? Would I go and be a worship pastor? And a little part of me went, I've always wanted to be an actual worship pastor. I've always wanted to have an actual job as not just the worship leader, but actually be paid to be this could be amazing. And I got all full of myself. Yeah. And I remember turning to him eventually going, no, it's not for me. I walked into the building. I thought, God isn't calling me to this place. Yeah. After a month of conversations, I found myself persuaded to say yes. And I don't mean persuaded in a negative way. The church I was at, St Matt's, said to me that don't worry, you can be at both churches if it helps. We really feel you're the right person for this job. You can be at one church in the morning, go to the other church plant in the afternoon, then come back to us in the evening, which meant I was doing 3 services, 2 rehearsals, setting everything up in the middle bit. It was great fun, but it was also exhausting and it was too much. Yes. Yeah. And about halfway through the year, I realised that I should have stuck with my original no. Yeah. Yes, in that church plant, we set the atmosphere. And when I was ready to leave, we'd had a guitarist and a singer join us, and I'd been able to train them up. So I left at the right time. Again, God provides for our needs. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And every single person in that church when I left was new. There were 50 or 60 people in that church who had never been to church. Yeah. It was absolutely amazing to see. But I knew that I wasn't called there. Yeah. I knew that the reason that I'd gone was because I'd always wanted to be a worship pastor. Sure. Not because God had called me to that place. Yeah. So yeah, big regrets on that one. Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, it's, like you say, it's easy to kind of be distracted into what we feel like could be a call from God because it kind of fits our ambition. But yeah, particularly if you know that actually this is not what God has placed me in, this is not the will of God. It's knowing it in your heart, isn't it? You get that witness that this is not right. Yeah. But what's interesting is that about a year ago, a job came up somewhere else locally, about half an hour's drive away. I thought, brilliant. A couple of people said to me, go for the job, go for the job. I drove down to the church for a Sunday morning service. I walked into the building and I felt the same feeling that I felt when I walked into the other church. Yeah. And straight away I thought, I recognise this now. I'm going to be obedient this time. And as much as I want this job, it's not for me. And wrote them in a
Yes.
very polite email afterwards to say, hi, just to let you know, love the service, nothing personal, but God isn't calling me here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
And that's
You
good
learn
because,
from it.
you learn, exactly. Yeah, you walk through that first one, you recognize the leading of the Holy Spirit for the second time, and that's, that's, you could have made the same mistake again, you never know, but now you know that, because, you listen. That's great. That's really good. That's an important lesson, I think, for all worship leaders to learn,
Yes.
because that sense is something that kind of, it sits in the heart of a worship leader. It's kind of sits there. Everyone thinks, there is this kind of, I could be up on the stage next to Matt Redman or Pat Barrett, or that could be where I'm headed, and they look for the stepping stones to take them there, and it's a very easy trap to fall into, isn't it?
I mean, it's funny that you mentioned Matt Redman. I remember reading about Matt Redman's career as a teenager, and I mapped out what he did and when he did it. And I remember going, in 1998, I remember looking at thinking, I'm behind schedule by at least 2 years. I need to hurry up.
Okay.
And then, but he was an inspiration for me.
Yeah.
Got over that. That was fine. A couple of years ago, went over to California with a good friend of mine who had an opportunity to go and meet some different worship leaders and things. And Scott Cunningham, who's heavily involved in Creation Fest in Cornwall, just said to us, listen, there's 3 Brits sat in the recording studio. Do you want to come and meet them? And I thought, yeah, like, I'm going to know these 3 Brits. This is 3 totally random people. Who are you going to introduce me to?
Because everyone in Britain knows everyone else.
Exactly. Walked in and sat there were Nick Herbert, Sam, I've forgotten his last name, from HGB Church. I feel very guilty now, but he's one of the leaders at HGB Church.
Yeah.
And Matt Redman.
Wow.
And my mouth dropped. And then I had to sort of physically put it up. And the person I went with was completely cool, completely chilled, just going shake hands and everything else. And then I shook hands with each one. And then as I sort of shook hands with Matt Redman, thought, yes. And then my hand didn't say very much at that point. I just sort of stayed quiet and all that. But again, I think it's really easy to idolize some people. Yeah. And these are people who I'd looked up to for a very long time, looked and learned from. And when I actually got an opportunity to meet them, realised actually you're human. Yeah. And it's wonderful to meet you and say hi to you, but we are all just humans. And they were looking at me in that sort of, hi, I don't know what to say to you, but hi, great to meet you. They were lovely, lovely people. Yeah. But yeah.
Fantastic. Wow, that's awesome, isn't it? So is there anything then that you've done, and maybe this within the context of working with teams, and might have covered this a little bit already, but is there anything in particular that you've done in working with teams that has gone really, really well that you would almost recommend to other teams to do as well? Obviously, we don't want to get into a whole copying thing, but if there are principles that you kind of work to, that they kind of cross the barriers of style and theology and all that kind of stuff. Is there anything in particular that you found works really well for a team?
Yeah, I always think that if you're not training up your replacement, you're not doing your full part of your job.
Sure.
For me, I know that there's people at my birth church who were my youth leaders who are still in charge of youth. Yeah. And no one's ever replaced them. And that's not to say that they should have replaced them, but there's nothing that's ever changed for them. For me, I've always had my eyes open to invest in someone who's going to take my job away from me. Right now, I know a second ago I saw John Stevenson join the chat. John Stevenson is someone that I led worship with for a while, doing different things. He's a teenager, or he's probably about 20, 21 now, or something like that. Amazing, amazing person. Recently, he's been producing and mixing tracks. One was featured on UCB. I'm looking at him thinking, you've now gone further in your journey than I have ever gone. You've got further than I've got, but it's great to invest in him early on and to give him opportunities to lead and come alongside his team and play a bit of keyboard for them, or play some guitar, or lead some worship at some of the events and things like that. I mean, you just see the impact of investing in someone. Yeah. And even if they don't replace you directly, seeing it go on. I think other teenagers that I've worked with, there's one at the moment who, actually I played golf with him earlier on today, the old pitching range thing or whatever it's called. I'm not a sporty person, but he was someone who at the start when I first met him, he felt that worship leading was something he was called to, but wasn't overly confident. And so what we did was I gave him an opportunity to be in the team with me. He came to my side. We would both play at the same time. He would watch what I was doing. And then we'd have a conversation afterwards about why I made certain decisions as we led worship. He would have a conversation with me, and we'd bounce them up. And as we bounced up these ideas, some things I learned, I was like, actually, I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point. And other things I was thinking, this is a really key thing for him to get.
Yeah.
And then about just before lockdown, a month before lockdown, he led worship at the student night at St. Matt's.
Fantastic.
And bearing in mind I'm not on team there, seeing him asked to do that was like a yes. The work that we've been doing outside in other areas has been spotted in him now, and the progress that he's made means he's now ready to do that on that stage.
Yeah.
So yeah, just little things like that. Investing in people constantly. I've got to say though, I said investing in young people. That's probably a bad thing to say. In the King's Anthem team, I've got a bass player who's in his 60s.
Fantastic.
This bass player is one of the best bass players I know.
Yeah.
He is absolutely brilliant. His heart for Jesus is solid. He also benefits from being invested in.
Yeah.
He might not have 60 odd years extra in life to go. Hopefully he will, because he's that good. I want to keep him. But he's still worth investing in, and giving him the resources to do the best he can do. He likes to type his music out separately to everyone else. He likes it a certain format, a certain way, so we can understand it. That's perfectly fine.
Fair enough.
What we do is I send him the music early when I remember. He always sends me a copy of what he's done. If I spot anything wrong, I'll send it back. Even that is resourcing him, training him up to be the best he can be, giving him a chance to learn those things and just do that. So yeah, investing in people without a doubt.
No, that's fantastic. No, that's really good to hear. And maybe we might have covered this again as well previously with your conversation about your grandma. But is there anything that anyone has said to you over the years, that some like advice or encouragement that has really stuck with you, particularly during those kind of seasons where it feels dry or you're feeling overlooked or whatever? But is there anything that's really stuck with you?
I'm going to actually think about. My gran was amazing for this, and I could spout out more stuff about my gran. I've mentioned Mark Taylor and his inspirational style of worship leading. I'm actually going to go to a person called Mike Walker. Mike was a student and a teenager that I used to do some worship with, and he is an amazing. I think he's writing for There Is Something More now on their online blogs.
Okay.
His writing is brilliant. His first blog, as far as I'm aware, was something called Freefall, and he wrote about the tension that he was feeling. Bear in mind, this is someone who got full marks on his theology A level.
Yeah.
Who gets full marks? You just don't do that, do you? You get some wrong somewhere. He's that sort of mentally. He's that sort of person. Totally inspirational. And this blog, he was talking about the tension he was feeling between religion and the tension between the secularism, and how does science, which God created, match with the religion that we understand, and how does the way that and everything else. He said it was like a tightrope between the two. Yeah. And he was like balancing between these two different things and not knowing what to do. And in this blog, he says that in the end, he just felt God say to him, just jump into me, just jump into my arms, because that doesn't matter. And so he jumped freefall. Okay, and that phrase, freefall, stuck with me. And it describes perfectly the way that I lead worship generally. So what I like to do is to set up a platform, set up a diving board, build it all properly, give people the tools, like I've said, invest in them, train them, encourage them. But once that diving board is there, once it's built, the closer you get to the edge of it as a worship leader, the more it wobbles, the more risky it feels. Yeah. But the fun part of a diving board isn't the wobble. The fun part of the diving board is jumping in. And when you jump in, you've got no more control.
That's it, yeah.
I can think of two examples of this. The first one wasn't me, it was someone else in the middle of summer, and they decided to, at the end of a worship set, it had been a good solid set. At the end of this worship set, they thought, it's just something I'm being asked to do. And we ended up singing, "Oh, Come All Ye Faithful." Yeah. The entire church went wild. It's middle of summer. We're singing "Oh, Come All Ye Faithful," but the entire church went wild on a different one. Trying to work out how to lead worship for something, a 4-song set. The last song's got to be quiet. And so we're trying to work out how this is going to go. We're trying to plan it out. And I got to the 4th song. Not one song from the official accepted list of songs I could choose fit in that service. Yeah. So I just started fiddling with all songs and think, okay, God, I know that when I get this, you're going to talk to me in some way. You'll make me feel tingly, or you'll make me feel fuzzy, or I'll feel satisfied in some way. Right now, I don't feel it. Yeah. And I ended up going to the kids' songs. I got that desperate. Okay. And one of the kids' songs was My Lighthouse. Yes. My Lighthouse, Classic When Collective. Obviously, the rules are you don't do a kids' song at the end before the prayers. And you don't do a fast song before the prayers either. You do a quiet song. Yeah. And so I started off singing this song quietly. and it worked. So I
Wow.
thought, talk to the boss, talk to the worship pastor. He said, yep, I trust you, go for it. We led the first 3 songs as a congregation. The whole band are now wondering, so we've rehearsed this song and everyone's going, this is going to be awful. And we start it, and we start singing the first 2 verses and the first chorus quietly. And it's going okay, and there's something in the room.
Yeah.
And there's, we're looking at people, and we get to the Lighthouse chorus bit, and everyone's sort of really singing it, and we think, this is actually going really well. And then I'm starting to tingle, I'm starting to feel it. I'm okay, this is going really well. This is better than I expected.
Yeah.
God is doing something in the room, and I don't know what it is. So we got to the end of the chorus and paused and went quiet, because I thought, I don't know where to go next, because my plan for this is that we stay quiet. It's the prayer time, but there's something else happening in the room. And so I just started proclaiming something, and I can't remember what it was now. I've got no recording of it. The recording went missing. Everything's gone. I've got no record of what I was saying, but it was something to do with the joy of God, the truth that is said. One of our drummers wasn't playing that day. We had a drummer on the stage and a drummer at the very back of the church, and he looked at me and waved. He knew that to one side of the stage was a Rain Collective Jingling Johnny, that noisy stick that you hit and bounce up and down. And he was nodding at me again, shall I come forward?
Yeah.
He ran from the back of the church to the front, jumped on the stage with this Jingling Johnny, and the entire church erupted in this joyous celebration, singing the 3rd verse, that the darkness will not hold us, that we will be filled with joy, that we will focus on the light, and that God has the victory. And as this moment happened, this eruption of joy in the room, came people dancing. Then the prayer time.
Fantastic.
And instead of being this silent prayer time, we were proclaiming God's truth in the prayers, and it just changed the atmosphere.
Yeah.
If I hadn't have jumped off that diving board, if I hadn't have taken that risk, that would never have happened.
Yeah.
Since then, I've heard stories of people who've come up to me and gone, just so you know, I came to church for the first time that night, and that was the night that everything changed for me.
Yeah.
Because when we got to that bit, it was so genuine.
Yes.
And I think sometimes if we follow the rules and we stick to a song and we never go beyond the song and we never take any risks and we play it safe, we end up taking and sterilizing who God is.
Yeah.
And God isn't sterile. God is a risk taker, a holy risk taker.
Yeah.
And he wants to jump out to do something different. And sometimes if we're called to take a risk, it'll go wrong because it'll be a human thing.
Yeah.
Other times, it will really, really pay off because we'll release something of the Spirit.
Yeah. No, that's really good.
About
Yeah, I can see it. It's coming across.
Good. Good.
No, it's fantastic. Yeah. I know what you mean, those kind of moments where you just got to like, here we go. We're just doing this. Here we go. And but they are such leader, you know, if you, well, I know that when I've chosen not to take that risk, you kind of walk away and you just kind of, you don't feel God's displeasure or anything like that, but you just kind of like have this wondering, I wonder what if, and you kind of have to work through that. But then that kind of, it does inspire you the next time you sense that leading. You know, God gives you another opportunity because of his grace, that he gives you another opportunity, and you're like, okay, this is it. I feel really bad about this. Here we go.
Yeah.
And it just, fantastic.
Yeah.
And then
there was one occasion we were leading worship in a small rural church. I've been asked to do an opening set, which was about 20, 25 minutes long. And I went out there having never met the congregation before. And I think 2 songs in, I realised this was a congregation that had only ever sung one song at a time. Because when the song started, they tried to sit down and got back up again. And I thought, we need to change this. So we paused halfway through, and it felt right to stop the worship and do something interactive.
Yeah.
And so I had people praying with each other out loud, which straight away freaked them out slightly. Then we came back to the again. But even that, even just recognising that this plan that I've got, that I've prayed about, I'm convinced God has given me, obviously wasn't perfect for this congregation. Therefore, God can't have given it to me as it is. Therefore, I have to adapt it on the spot because this congregation will not engage. And the whole point of us as worship leaders is not just to lead worship, but to steward the worship. Yes. To see what's happening in a congregation and to support that congregation to engage with God.
Yeah. Because in the end, it's not about you. Although the incredible thing is that, like you're saying, you're explaining these situations where we have the responsibility of leading a congregation. And then in the middle of that responsibility, God is teaching us something, like us. Yeah. I was like, hang on, I'm leading worship here. This is not the time for a lesson. I've got this to focus on. No, I'm going to teach you something here now.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Love it. Fantastic. All right, so one final, this has been really great. There's some loads of great stuff coming out. Thank you so much, Steve.
Oh, it's been great.
I've just got one final question, just a quick one. Are there any books or podcasts that you're reading or listening to at the moment that you would encourage other worship leaders to listen to?
Yeah. So I'm going to put this one. Everyone's probably suggested this book in the history of the last series of these things. But obviously, we've got The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry from John Mark Comer.
Okay.
This one is the lessons in this about letting go of everything, about focusing on what matters. As a worship leader, I looked at this and thought sometimes I busy myself. I don't make time for God. But actually, what happened then? It all went.
No worries.
I'll be really, really quick. I'll just finish what I was saying.
Go for it.
That book, brilliant.
Yeah.
This book, because it's summer holidays, I'm going to put a fiction book in there.
Yeah.
Terry Pratchett wrote a book called Small Gods. It's a satire on the state of the church.
Yeah.
And the whole point of this book, the story, is about someone who enters this building with absolute faith in their God and discovers an empty building full of people who are very busy.
Yeah.
All of them who absolutely believe in God, but actually none of them mean what they're doing. And as a worship leader, when I read that book, it opened my eyes to how busy, again, I got.
Yeah.
And how relevant that was. Third book, which for me is really important, God on Mute by Pete Gregg.
Oh, okay, yes.
God on Mute, then make sure you read it. It's a brilliant text on unanswered prayer. And for me as a worship leader, I'm putting words into people's mouths all the time.
Yeah.
And if I'm constantly saying to people, sing about the victory, See a Victory is the latest Elevation song.
Yeah.
I've got to be, if someone's partner has just passed away, or if someone's just been diagnosed with terminal cancer, they're not seeing the victory right now.
Sure.
And God on Mute gave me the language I needed to be able to support people whose prayers haven't been answered.
Yeah.
To support people whose prayers, who are in that silent Saturday of Easter, and to know how to respond to them. It's not their fault. It's not their sin. It's not their problem. It's actually something different and deeper. So God on Mute.
Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for making it through the technological obstacles that we had tonight, but it's been really good. It's been really good, and thank you so much for sharing your journey and the stuff that you've learned. I know there's been so much tonight, so I think I would encourage people to go back on YouTube and watch this over again, because there's some really good stuff here. You're going to need to listen to it again just to kind of get it all. So thank you so much, Steve. It's been a real pleasure to chat with you, and we'll keep in touch. Hopefully see you in that next 631 worship. But otherwise, have a great summer. I'll see you soon. Thank you, Steve.
Definitely see you soon.
See you soon.